In the quiet little town of Maplewood, where life moved at a slower pace and everyone knew each other by name, there lived a woman who had become almost legendary in her own right. She was 97 years old, sharp as a tack, and carried herself with a grace that made people stop and take notice. Her name wasn't important to most. What mattered was the way she seemed to belong to another time altogether. With her silver hair always neatly pinned back and her eyes twinkling like they held secrets no one else could guess, she exuded. An aura of mystery and wisdom. Her home sat on the edge of town, surrounded by tall trees whose leaves rustled softly in the breeze. It wasn't a grand mansion or anything fancy. It was just a simple house built decades ago, with ivy creeping up its walls and flower beds bursting with colors even in the harshest summers. People often wondered how she managed to keep the garden looking so vibrant when most folks struggled to grow even a single tomato plant. But this woman had a knack for it, tending to her flowers every morning as if it were her daily ritual. Sometimes neighbors would see her sitting on the porch, sipping tea and reading books with thick glasses perched on her nose. She looked content, peaceful, like someone who had seen enough of life to know what truly mattered. For nearly 70 years, this house had been her sanctuary. It had witnessed countless moments, the laughter of family gatherings, quiet evenings spent knitting by the fire, and maybe even a few tears shed behind closed doors. But now, something unexpected was happening. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community. The elderly woman had decided to sell her beloved home. At first, no one believed it. How could she leave the place that had sheltered her for so long? When asked about it, she simply smiled a warm, reassuring smile and said, "It's time." Those 3 words carried more weight than anyone realized. To her, it wasn't just about moving out. It was about letting go of something she had cherished deeply and making room for new beginnings. She didn't need much convincing. Her granddaughter, who visited her regularly, tried to talk her out of it, urging her to stay put. After all, the house was filled with memories, but the old woman shook her head gently. "I've lived a good life here," she said, her voice steady, "but I'm ready for something simpler." And so, with that decision made, she called in 2 local real estate agents to help her list the property. These weren't flashy city slickers driving expensive cars. They were down-to-earth people who knew the ins and outs of selling homes in small towns like Maplewood. They arrived at the house one sunny afternoon, expecting a routine walkthrough. Little did they know, they were about to step into a world unlike any they'd ever encountered. As soon as they crossed the threshold, they could tell this wasn't going to be your average listing. The house smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish, a comforting scent that wrapped around them like a hug. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the creaky wooden floors. Every corner told a story, the vintage furniture polished to a shine, shelves lined with leather-bound books that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades, and walls adorned with black and white photographs of people long gone but not forgotten. But there was something else too, something harder to put into words. An air of mystery lingered in the rooms, as though the house itself had secrets waiting to be uncovered. The agents exchanged glances, sensing that this job might turn out to be far more intriguing than either of them had anticipated. And then, as they climbed the stairs to inspect the attic, they found their first clue. Buried beneath piles of old clothes, dusty trunks, and forgotten knickknacks, there was a locked wooden chest. Its surface was scratched and worn, evidence of years of use or perhaps neglect. When they asked the homeowner about it, she didn't hesitate. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a small brass key, and handed it over with a knowing smile. "Go ahead," she said. "Take a look." The agents opened the chest carefully, unsure of what they might find. Inside, they discovered stacks of letters tied together with faded ribbons, yellowed newspaper clippings, and most surprisingly, a collection of rare coins. Some of them dated back to the early 1900s, their surfaces tarnished but still bearing intricate designs. One coin in particular caught their attention. It bore markings neither of them recognized, and when they turned it over in their hands, they couldn't shake the feeling that it was worth far more than its weight in gold. This is incredible," one of them murmured, his voice tinged with awe. The homeowner chuckled softly, leaning against the doorway with a twinkle in her eye. "Oh, that's just the beginning," she said cryptically. "There's more where that came from." Her words sent a shiver down their spines. What exactly had they walked into? As they stood there amidst the clutter of the attic, surrounded by relics of the past, they couldn't help but wonder what other treasures lay hidden within these walls. And more importantly, what stories did they hold? Little did they know, this was only the tip of the iceberg. The house was a treasure trove of history, memories, and mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Each room seemed to whisper secrets of its own, inviting them to dig deeper. For the agents, this wasn't just a job anymore, it was an adventure, one that promised to change their lives forever. The attic had been just the start, but already the agents were hooked. They couldn't stop thinking about that wooden chest and its contents: letters, coins, newspaper clippings, all pieces of a puzzle they didn't yet fully understand. Homeowners' cryptic comment about more where that came from lingered in their minds like an unanswered question. What exactly had this woman been hiding all these years? And why was she choosing now to reveal it? With renewed curiosity, they decided to explore further. Their next stop was the basement, a place most people avoided unless absolutely necessary. Basements always seemed to carry a certain eeriness, especially in old houses like this one. The air down there felt cooler, heavier, as if the weight of decades past pressed against their shoulders. Cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains, and the dim light bulb flickered faintly, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. At first glance, the basement appeared ordinary enough. There were shelves stacked with jars of preserves, some of which looked so old that their labels had faded beyond recognition. Tools lined the workbench: hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, all coated with a thin layer of rust. It seemed like the kind of space where time simply stood still, untouched by the outside world. But something about it felt off, like there was more to it than met the eye. One of the agents crouched near the far wall, brushing away dust from the floorboards. That's when they noticed it: a loose plank, slightly raised compared to the others. At first, they thought it might be nothing, just an old house settling over time. But then they pried it up carefully, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside lay artifacts that made their jaws drop. There were delicate porcelain figurines, each one painted with intricate designs that must have taken hours, if not days, to complete. A set of gold-plated pocket watches gleamed faintly under the weak light, their faces engraved with swirling patterns. And then there was the jewelry, a dazzling array of rings, bracelets, and necklaces, many adorned with gemstones that sparkled even in the gloom. One necklace, in particular, caught their attention. Its centerpiece was a sapphire so large and vivid that it almost seemed unreal. The stone shimmered with shades of blue and green, catching the light in a way that made it look alive. "Wow," one of the agents whispered, picking up the necklace gingerly. This is unbelievable." The other nodded slowly, still processing what they were seeing. "Do you think she knows how valuable this stuff is?" he asked, glancing toward the stairs where the homeowner stood watching silently. She did. Oh, she knew. Leaning casually against the doorframe, her arms crossed loosely over her chest, she wore an expression that was equal parts amusement and nostalgia. Her eyes scanned the scene before her, taking in the stunned faces of the two agents. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and measured. My late husband traveled a lot, she explained, stepping closer. He brought me things from his journeys, souvenirs, keepsakes, little reminders of the places he'd been. Some of them are quite old, very rare. I've kept them safe all these years. Her words painted a picture of a life filled with adventure and love, even though she herself had never left the comfort of her small town. Her husband, it seemed, had been a man of the world, someone who had roamed far and wide, collecting treasures along the way. And now, those treasures were scattered throughout the house, tucked away in corners and hidden compartments, waiting for someone to rediscover them. But the agents weren't done yet. As fascinating as the basement find was, they couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. This house was like an onion, layered with history and secrets. Every room held the potential for another discovery, another glimpse into the lives of the people who had called it home. They returned to the main floor, drawn inexplicably to the library. It wasn't a sprawling room filled with towering bookcases. Like you'd see in movies, it was cozy, intimate, with just enough space for a desk, a chair, and a few shelves crammed with books. The smell of aged paper hung in the air, mingling with the faint scent of lavender that seemed to permeate the entire house. It was quiet here, peaceful, like a sanctuary meant for reading and reflection. As they ran their fingers along the spines of the books, one of them noticed something unusual, a row of encyclopedias that looked slightly out of place. They pulled one out cautiously, revealing a hidden door behind it. Neither of them said a word. They simply exchanged a glance, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Behind the door lay a small, windowless room. It was cramped and cluttered, but what caught their attention immediately were the documents strewn across the desk in the center. Maps, journals, sketches. It was like stepping into the mind of an explorer. One map depicted ancient ruins, marked with notes written in faded ink. Another showed trade routes from centuries ago, connecting distant lands through lines and symbols. The journals were filled with handwritten entries detailing adventures, discoveries, and encounters with cultures long gone. Among the papers, they found a letter. It was addressed to the homeowner, written in elegant handwriting that suggested care and thoughtfulness. The date at the top indicated it had been penned decades earlier, shortly before her husband's passing. Opening it carefully, they began to read aloud. "My dearest," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. Please know that our life together has been the greatest treasure I could ever hope for. These memories, these artifacts, they are not just objects. They are stories, fragments of a world we shared. Guard them well, and may they inspire others long after we are gone." By the time they finished reading, both agents were silent. The weight of the words settled over them, heavy yet profound. This wasn't just a collection of random items. It was a legacy, a testament to a life lived fully and passionately. The homeowner watched them intently, her expression softening as she saw the impact the letter had on them. "He always dreamed of turning this house into a museum," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "A place where people could come and learn about the world, about history, about us. Selling the house feels like the right thing to do, not because I need the money, but because I want his dream to live on." Her voice wavered slightly, betraying the emotion she tried so hard to keep hidden. For a moment, the agents forgot why they were there. This wasn't just a property listing anymore. It was a story, one that deserved to be told, shared, and celebrated. And as they stood in that tiny secret room, surrounded by relics of the past, they realized something important. This house wasn't just a building. It was a vessel, carrying within it the hopes, dreams, and memories of everyone who had ever lived there. And now, thanks to the courage of a 97-year-old woman, it was ready to embark on a new chapter, a chapter that promised to inspire generations to come. The discovery of the secret room had left the agents reeling. but it also ignited a fire in them, a mix of awe, curiosity, and determination. They couldn't just walk away now. This house wasn't simply a property to be listed and sold. It was a living, breathing time capsule filled with stories that begged to be told. The homeowner's quiet strength and her willingness to share her life's treasures added another layer of depth to everything they were uncovering. It felt personal now, as if they weren't just doing their job, they were stepping into a role much bigger than themselves. After taking a moment to process what they'd found in the secret room, the agents decided to continue exploring. Each new corner of the house seemed to hold its own surprises, and they couldn't help but wonder how deep this rabbit hole went. Their next stop was the living room, a space they had initially dismissed as ordinary. After all, it looked like any other cozy sitting area. Overstuffed armchairs, faded floral curtains, and a fireplace surrounded by family photos. But when they took a closer look, they realized there was more to it than met the eye. One of the agents noticed something peculiar about the mantel above the fireplace. At first glance, it appeared to be lined with decorative objects, vases, candlesticks, and small sculptures, but upon closer inspection, one item stood out. It was an ornate wooden box, intricately carved with patterns that resembled vines, twisting around each other. The craftsmanship was exquisite, almost too perfect to belong in such a humble setting. When they picked it up, it felt heavier than expected, suggesting it held something valuable inside. "Do you think we should open it?" one of them asked hesitantly, glancing toward the homeowner. She nodded, her expression unreadable but encouraging. "Go ahead," she said softly. "There's no harm in looking." With trembling hands, they unlatched the box and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a collection of letters bound together with ribbon. These weren't just any letters, they were love letters, written in elegant cursive script. Some were yellowed with age, while others looked relatively newer, but all of them bore the unmistakable mark of devotion. The agents exchanged glances, unsure whether they should read them or leave them untouched. Sensing their hesitation, the homeowner stepped forward and gently picked up the bundle. "These are from my husband," she explained, her voice tinged with both sadness and fondness. "He wrote to me whenever he traveled, pouring his heart onto paper. Even after we married and settled down, he never stopped writing. He said it helped him stay connected to me, to himself, to the world." As she spoke, her fingers traced the edges of the letters as if reliving memories long past. She didn't elaborate further, but her silence spoke volumes. It was clear that these letters meant the world to her, not just because of their content, but because they represented a bond that had endured through distance, time, and even death. For the agents, it was a poignant reminder that this house wasn't just filled with objects, it was brimming with emotion, with love, with humanity. But the discoveries didn't end there. Inspired by the emotional weight of the letters, they pressed on, determined to explore every inch of the house. Their next destination was the kitchen, a room that seemed deceptively ordinary at first glance. It was modestly furnished, with chipped countertops and cabinets that groaned slightly when opened. Yet, despite its simplicity, it radiated warmth, as though countless meals and conversations had taken place within its walls. As they rummaged through drawers and cupboards, they stumbled upon a metal tin tucked away in a corner. Its surface was scratched and dented, bearing the scars of years gone by. Inside the tin, they found photographs, dozens of them, some black and white, others in faded color. Each picture told a story, a young couple standing hand in hand outside the very house they now stood in. A group of friends gathered around a picnic table, laughing as sunlight streamed through the trees. A child holding a puppy, their faces identical masks of pure joy. There were also candid shots of the homeowner herself, captured at different stages of her life. In one photo, she was a teenager, dressed in a flowery dress and grinning mischievously at the camera. In another, she was middle-aged, cradling a baby in her arms, her eyes shining with pride and exhaustion. "These are beautiful," one of the agents murmured, flipping through the stack. "They're like windows into your life." The homeowner smiled faintly, her gaze distant. "That's exactly what they are," she replied. "Every photo is a memory, frozen in time. Together, they form a tapestry of who I am and who I've been." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. To her, these images weren't just snapshots. They were chapters of a book, fragments of a narrative that spanned nearly a century. And as the agent sifted through them, they began to see her not just as a 97-year-old woman selling her home, but as a person who had lived fully, loved deeply, and experienced the highs and lows of life with remarkable resilience. Yet, even as they marveled at the photographs, they couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. Something about the house kept pulling them back, urging them to dig deeper. Driven by instinct or perhaps sheer curiosity, they returned to the attic, drawn once again to the chest that had started it all. This time, instead of focusing on the coins and trinkets, they turned their attention to the bundles of letters tied with ribbon. Carefully untangling one bundle, they began to read. The handwriting was neat and precise, each word chosen with care. Some letters described adventures in far-off lands, deserts stretching endlessly under starlit skies, bustling markets filled with vibrant colors and sounds, ancient temples whispering secrets of civilizations long gone. Others recounted quieter moments, reflections on life, love, and the passage of time. Reading them felt like eavesdropping on private conversations, yet there was no sense of intrusion. Instead, it felt like being let in on something sacred, something profoundly human. By the time they finished reading, hours had passed, though it felt like mere minutes. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the attic in shades of orange and gold. Outside, the world grew still, the hum of daily life fading into the background. Inside, however, the atmosphere buzzed with energy, charged by the weight of the stories they had uncovered. As they descended the stairs, their minds raced with possibilities. What should they do with all of this? How could they honor the legacy of the homeowner and her late husband without losing the essence of what made it special? One thing was certain. This wasn't going to be a typical real estate transaction. This house deserved more than a for sale sign on the front lawn. It deserved recognition, celebration, and preservation. When they reached the ground floor, they found the homeowner waiting for them, seated in her favorite armchair by the window. She looked up as they entered, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the evening light. Though she didn't say anything, her presence alone conveyed a sense of calm assurance, as if she already knew the path forward. "We need to talk about what comes next," one of the agents said finally, breaking the silence. "This house, your story, it deserves to be shared with the world." She nodded slowly, her lips curving into a faint smile. "I agree," she said simply, "and I trust you to make it happen." In that moment, a plan began to take shape, not just for selling the house, but for transforming it into something greater, something timeless, something that would ensure her legacy lived on, inspiring generations to come. The realization that this house was far more than just a property hit the agents like a wave. They had spent hours poring over letters, photographs, and artifacts, piecing together fragments of a life well lived. But now, standing in the quiet glow of the evening light with the homeowner watching them intently, they felt the weight of responsibility settle on their shoulders. This wasn't just about selling 4 walls and a roof, it was about honoring a legacy, preserving memories, and sharing a story that deserved to be told. As the agents sat down with the homeowner to discuss what came next, they found themselves drawn into yet another layer of her world. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, as if each one carried its own significance. "When my husband passed," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, "I promised myself I'd protect what we built together, not just this house, but everything it stands for. These treasures, these stories, they're not mine alone. They belong to anyone who's willing to listen." Her words resonated deeply, sparking an idea in the agents' minds. What if they could turn the house into something more than a private residence? What if it became a place where people could step back in time, immerse themselves in history, and connect with the lives of those who came before them? The thought excited them, but it also raised questions. How would they make it happen? And, more importantly, how would the community respond? Determined to find answers, the agents spent the next few days diving headfirst into research. They reached out to local historians, museum curators, and preservation experts, seeking advice on how to transform the house into a cultural landmark. To their surprise, everyone they spoke to was captivated by the concept. One historian even called it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring history to life in such an authentic way. Encouraged by the positive feedback, they returned to the homeowner with a proposal. "We want to preserve your home as it is," one of them explained, spreading out sketches and blueprints across the dining table. "Each room will tell a part of your story, your travels, your marriage, your life here in Maplewood. We'll restore the house while keeping its original charm intact. It'll be like stepping into a living museum." For a moment, the homeowner said nothing. Her eyes scanned the plans, taking in every detail, the layout of the exhibits, placement of artifacts, the flow of visitors through the rooms. Then, finally, she smiled a soft, knowing smile that lit up her face. "This is exactly what Charles wanted," she said softly. "He always dreamed of turning this house into a place where people could come and learn, where they could feel inspired. If you can make that dream come true, then I trust you completely." With her blessing, the project moved forward at lightning speed. Word spread quickly through Maplewood, drawing curious neighbors and eager volunteers alike. Some offered to help clean and organize the house, while others donated time and resources to support the renovation efforts. Even the local newspaper ran a feature on the story, capturing the imagination of readers far beyond the small-town dot as work progressed. The agents discovered even more hidden gems tucked away in the house. In the kitchen pantry, behind rows of canned goods, they found a collection of handwritten recipes bound together with string. Each page was filled with notes and annotations, tips for perfecting soups, tricks for baking flaky pies, reminders to add just a pinch more salt. The recipes weren't just instructions. They were glimpses into the homeowner's daily life, her love for cooking, and her desire to share joy through food. In the bedroom closet, buried beneath layers of blankets and sweaters, they unearthed a trunk containing handmade quilts. Each quilt was a masterpiece, stitched with intricate patterns and vibrant colors. Some bore patches embroidered with dates and initials, while others featured scenes from nature, flowers, birds, sunsets, all rendered in thread. It was clear that these quilts had been labors of love, created over years of careful craftsmanship. Every new discovery added depth to the narrative they were building. The attic became a gallery showcasing the homeowner's late husband's adventures, complete with maps, journals, and artifacts from his travels. The living room transformed into a tribute to family life, displaying photographs, letters, and mementos that told the story of love and connection. Even the garden outside was given a makeover, with plaques explaining the origins of certain plants and flowers that held special meaning to the homeowner. But perhaps the most poignant exhibit was the secret room itself. Left largely untouched, it served as a shrine to the couple's shared dreams and aspirations. Visitors could sit at the desk, leaf through the journals, and imagine the conversations that must have taken place within those walls. A framed copy of the heartfelt letter from the homeowner's husband hung prominently, inviting guests to reflect on the power of love and legacy. Throughout the process, the homeowner remained actively involved, offering guidance and sharing anecdotes that brought the exhibits to life. She walked through the house daily, watching as it evolved from a private sanctuary into a public treasure. Though she never said it outright, it was clear that letting go wasn't easy for her. Yet, there was also a sense of peace in her demeanor, as if she knew she was making the right choice. On the day of the grand opening, the house buzzed with excitement. Locals poured in, eager to explore the newly transformed space. Children marveled at the shiny coins and sparkling jewelry, while adults lingered over the letters and photographs, soaking in the details of a life so richly lived. Strangers introduced themselves to one another, bonding over shared reactions to the exhibits. It was more than just a tour, it was an experience, one that left everyone feeling connected to something greater than themselves. Standing near the entrance, the homeowner watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. She didn't need to say much. Her presence alone said enough. As visitors approached her to express their gratitude, she simply smiled and nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For her, this moment wasn't about recognition or praise. It was about seeing her home come alive again, welcoming new faces and creating new memories. By the end of the day, exhaustion set in, but it was the good kind that comes from knowing you've accomplished something meaningful. The agents joined the homeowner on the porch, sipping tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming flowers from the garden. "You did it," one of them said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You turned your dream and your husband's dream into reality." She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "No," she replied. "We did it together." And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of laughter and conversation drifting from inside the house, it felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. The house wasn't just a repository of memories anymore, it was a beacon of hope, inspiration, and human connection. And though the homeowner would soon move on to a simpler chapter of her life, her legacy would live on, woven into the very fabric of the community she had loved for nearly a century. The grand opening of the House-Turned Museum was just the beginning. What followed was a ripple effect that touched every corner of Maplewood and beyond. People from neighboring towns started visiting, drawn not just by curiosity but by the promise of stepping into a world unlike their own, a world filled with history, love, and humanity. The house quickly became more than a local attraction. It turned into a symbol of connection, reminding everyone who walked through its doors that life is made up of moments, memories, and the stories we choose to share. For the homeowner, the transition wasn't easy. Moving out of the house she had called home for nearly 7 decades felt like saying goodbye to an old friend. But she handled it with grace, knowing deep down that this was the right decision. She settled into a cozy retirement community nearby where her days were quieter, but no less fulfilling. Her granddaughter visited often, bringing updates about the museum and sharing stories from visitors who had been moved by the exhibits. Each story brought a smile to the homeowner's face, reinforcing her belief that letting go had been worth it. Back at the house, the flow of visitors never slowed. Some came alone, seeking solace in the quiet corners of the rooms. Others arrived in groups, laughing and chatting as they explored the artifacts and read the letters aloud to one another. Schoolchildren filed in on field trips, wide-eyed and full of questions. Teachers used the space as a living classroom, teaching lessons about history, culture, and the importance of preserving personal legacies. It wasn't uncommon to see someone pause in front of a display, lost in thought, or find a visitor wiping away tears after reading one of the heartfelt notes left behind by the homeowner's late husband. One of the most surprising developments was how the house began to inspire creativity in unexpected ways. Local artists started hosting workshops in the garden, using the vibrant flowers and serene atmosphere as inspiration for their work. Writers set up makeshift desks in the library, penning poems and short stories inspired by the tales embedded in the walls. Even musicians found themselves drawn to the space, composing melodies that echoed the emotions stirred by the exhibits. The house had become a hub of artistic expression, breathing new life into the town's cultural scene. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the community itself. In a time when people seemed increasingly disconnected from each other, from their roots, from the past, the house served as a bridge. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years reconnected over shared memories of the homeowner and her late husband. Families brought their children to learn about simpler times, instilling values of gratitude and resilience. Strangers struck up conversations, bonding over the universal themes of love, loss, and legacy. The house didn't just preserve the past. It helped shape the future, fostering a sense of unity and purpose among those who experienced it. As months turned into years, the museum continued to thrive. Donations poured in from visitors eager to support its upkeep, and volunteers dedicated countless hours to maintaining the exhibits and welcoming guests. The agents who had first discovered the hidden treasures stayed involved too, serving as unofficial ambassadors for the project. They often joked that they'd stumbled onto the find of a lifetime, but there was truth in their words. Their careers had been transformed by the experience, and so had their lives. Then, one crisp autumn morning, news spread through Mapleworth that the homeowner had passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 100 years old, having lived a life rich with adventure, love, and wisdom. Though her death saddened many, it also sparked a renewed appreciation for what she had given to the community. Her funeral was held in the garden of the museum, surrounded by the flowers she had once tended with such care. Hundreds attended, filling the space with laughter, tears, and countless stories of how she had touched their lives. In her will, she left behind a final gift, a request that the house remain open to the public indefinitely, ensuring that her legacy and her husband's dream would endure for generations to come. A plaque was added near the entrance, bearing a simple inscription: "This house is a testament to love, curiosity, and the enduring magic of shared human experiences." Years later, the house still stands, its charm undiminished by time. Visitors continue to flock to it, each one leaving with a deeper understanding of what it means to live fully and leave something meaningful behind. The attic remains a favorite spot where kids marvel at the coins and adults pore over the journals, imagining the adventures that led to their creation. The secret room draws hushed crowds, its dim lighting casting shadows that seem almost alive, whispering secrets only the walls can hear. And yet, despite all the changes, the heart of the house remains unchanged. It's not just a building, it's a vessel of memory, a keeper of stories, a reminder that even the smallest lives can leave the biggest impacts. For those lucky enough to step inside, it offers a glimpse into a world where love transcends time, where dreams take root and grow, and where the simplest acts of kindness can create ripples that last forever. In the end, the story of the 97-year-old woman and her extraordinary home isn't just about what was found within its walls. It's about what those discoveries revealed, not just about her, but about all of us. It's a story of courage, of letting go, and of finding beauty in the connections we make along the way. And though the homeowner may no longer be here to tell it herself, her voice echoes through every room, every artifact, every visitor who walks through the door. Her legacy lives on not just in the house, but in the hearts of everyone who has ever been touched by it.